There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
I am really, really excited that Gina of the Fabulous BookTube channel, Gina Stand Your Books from the Seattle area, is joining me on Bite Size Book Chats. Gina, hello.
Hi, Sean. It's great to be here.
How lovely to meet you on Zoom.
You too. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to see your face and actually talk to you. I say in person, but in person.
As close as it gets these days. I love your channel, and you have a very distinct variety of books that you discuss on your channel, sometimes with a glass of wine, of which I very much approve, although I'm a white wine drinker. Please give us your elevator pitch for Gina Stand Your Books.
Well, I've never actually elevator pitched myself because I tend to not talk about it a lot, but I love to read and talk about my favorites. I call them the mid-century ladies, the Barbara Pims, the D.E. Stevensons. I put Rosamund Pilcher in that category, Miss Reed. So that is my favorite genre, although I read a lot. I also love fantasy and mystery and middle grade. So I like to read a lot of different things, but my focus really is the ladies.
Well, and it's your focus on which that you and I connect the most, because I share exactly that taste. Haven't tried a Rosamund Pilcher novel. I must do that. But Barbara Pym is the goddess. You're an inspiration to me because you read so widely in other genres, and I don't. And I was quite amused to see you were going off on a tangent with Star Trek novels. From Barbara Pym to Star Trek. You're fantastic, Gina.
Yes, it's a little eclectic. I am hosting Book Trek 2021 with a bunch of other booktubers for this 5 months.
Oh, so it's almost over.
It's almost over.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's been delightfully fun.
Are you going to go on to Star Wars novels next year?
No, but I'm going to continue reading Star Trek novels, which This is the first time I've read them. I've watched the series and have never read the books before. So this is the first reading experience. And they're just, some of them are terrible. Some of them are wonderful, but they're very interesting and a lot of fun. So I will definitely continue reading them next year.
Do you have any aspirations to write, Gina?
None, zero, not at all.
If you ever reconsider that, I would like to see you write a Star Trek novel in the style of Barbara Pym.
That might be interesting.
that only Gina Stanier could write it, I think. We are here to talk about a middle grade novel. I didn't actually realize it was a middle grade novel until about 30 minutes ago, but it's a middle grade novel very recently published, set in the UK in World War II, but actually by an American writer, as far as I understand it. A Place to Hang the Moon by Kate Albus. It sounds fantastic, and I love that cover so much.
Isn't it wonderful? Yeah. I heard about this book on someone's channel, and I wish I could remember where I heard it. I can't now, but I read this on my Kindle the first time, and then I loved it so much I had to actually buy the book, because I just want to, when I feel bad, I just want to pick this up and look at it and say, it makes me feel better.
It's a fantastic cover. So tell us about this book, Gina.
So, as you mentioned, it's set in World War II, and it is about 3 children. They're living with their grandmother in London. The grandmother passes away in the very beginning, and so the children are orphans. Their parents have already died, and they're not that close to their grandmother, so they don't feel all that sad about it, but they're a little bit flummoxed because they don't quite know what they're going to do. They have no other relatives, no place else to go. They have a little bit of money because their family was not poor, but they don't have anybody to live with other than the housekeeper, who can't keep them because they're not hers. So they come up with what they call a preposterous plan to get evacuated to the country to look for a family. So it's about trying to kind of finding a family, finding that affection, that family love that they've never really felt. And they get evacuated, and it goes on from there, and it's delightful.
And it's, I believe it's actually set right at 1940, so right at the very beginning of the
Mhm.
war. Yeah, my goodness, the plot reminds me of so much of the reading that I loved as a kid. I'm thinking Enid Blyton, and I'm thinking maybe even Chronicles of Narnia. Wasn't that the opening premise of that? Weren't they evacuated to their uncles in the war?
They were. Yes, they
Yeah.
were. It's very full of the World War II tropes, which the ones I love. I love the orphan stories. I love the evacuation stories. It does that, and it does it in such a sweet and charming way that it will tug at your heartstrings. It's very, very sweet.
Some of the reviews I read just this morning say that it also avoids the pitfalls and all the cliches of that kind of a setting and that kind of a story. So there's a little bit of subtle politics in it, in that the woman that they really find and love the most is a German lady, or is her husband German?
Her husband is German.
Right.
Yes. So throughout the first half of the book, when they're trying to sort of find a place to billet, no one wants to give them to this woman. She's also the librarian, because the town thinks of her as sort of a sketchy character or unsuitable because her husband is German. And we don't really know much more about it than that, but we do find a little bit more as the story goes on. But yes, she's blackballed a little bit from the village. And
so the kids are already, or some or all of the kids are already a priori bookish.
Yes.
Or does she inculcate that? Does she?
No, the kids are bookish. And they're in the very first scene of the book where they are at their grandmother's funeral. The kids they've all got kind of a book tucked under their arm. So the kids are already bookish, which is another delightful thing about the story, is it goes into some detail about what they're reading. If you have kids and you want to expand their reading knowledge, it's one of those books where you go, oh, I want to read that. Oh, they're talking about The Little Princess. I want to read that. She goes into some detail about the other books they're reading, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the review I found on thenerddaily.com quotes one sentence from the book that just made me fall in love with it. The sentence is, "The first words of a new book are so delicious, like the first taste of a cookie fresh from the oven and not yet properly cooled."
Yes, the book is full of those wonderful quotes. It ends up at Christmas time, so there's a really wonderful Christmas scene. And the kids, they have some struggles. They don't find it's not easy for them to find their family. So they definitely have some hard times, which makes you really feel for them. But when they do find their found family, there's a wonderful Christmas scene, and it's very, very charming.
It sounds really lovely. It's already kind of got a tug on my heart, so that's fantastic. And yet it's written by this woman from where is she from? Grew up in New York, now lives in rural Maryland.
Yeah, I didn't realize that when I first read it, because it feels very, very English to me.
British. Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's a fairly long novel. I mean, I don't know how big the print is, but it's 300 pages.
It's almost exactly 300 pages, and it's got a reading list in the back too. So also delightful. Enid Blyton is one of the books that they were reading, A Little Princess, but it lists them all out in the back. So if you are a kid and you want to read some of their books,
or a big kid.
Yes, I made a few notes on what I wanted to read next too.
Gina, this has been great. I hope that you will come back.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me, Sean. It was so much fun.
Here is Olivia from Auckland, New Zealand. Olivia, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
It's great to meet you. And we never did talk about how did you find my channel? Do you remember?
Your YouTube channel. I found it. Or
did you find me on Goodreads first?
I found you on YouTube first because this year is my first year that I've forayed into BookTube, and I've been loving it. And what sparked my interest in BookTube was that I decided to read the book along list, and I found your channel, I think, ironically, because of the book along list. And I was looking, I sense that you might not be like much of a fan of the Booker Prize.
Well,
Do you want to say something there?
That's fair.
Yeah.
I won't take time in this little chat to expand on that, but yes, that's a fair assumption.
Yeah. So there, there are a lot of problems with the list, but I was in lockdown and I needed a project really. And so I was reading all these dense, complicated books and just looking for booktubers to help me, I guess, finalize my thoughts on these books. And good. I found you because I'd read Shuggie Bain, and I read your review of Shuggie Bain, and then you were saying that you were going to have to read the long list.
I made a vow. That's right. And so and it didn't go well this year reading the long list, but
yeah, that's how I found your channel.
Oh, that's fabulous. And I found you on Goodreads eventually because you wrote a fabulous review of a collection of essays by Lucy Ellmann, and it is called Things Are Against Us. And I'm going to start this chat about that collection, which you gave 5 stars to, by quoting the first line of your review. I'm going to link to your Goodreads in the show notes, but I'm also going to link to the actual review of this book because it's so smart. I'm going to give you the first line, and then I want you to just riff on it. Lucy Ellmann is pissed, and I am here for it.
I think that really sums it up. Shall we just finish the chat here? That's basically the collection of essays. So this is a collection of essays by Lucy Ellmann, who's a big famous author, Booker shortlisted author, and I kind of see this collection of essays as being a little bit self-indulgent, maybe. She basically has written a collection of essays on everything that she finds problematic, irritating, needing to be addressed in the world. So it covers lots of big, important topics: feminism, the Trump administration, the failure of democracy, climate change, the big ones. But also just the minor irritations of everyday life. So she starts out at the beginning of the essay. She begins with a note which says that her everyday trifling concerns sort of pale in comparison to the big issues of the world. And I think she wrote this in the pandemic, so that's probably what she's alluding to. But she finishes that note saying, "Let's complain." And I just thought that was quite a funny way into the collection of essays, and it really captures the tone of the essays. I really enjoyed this because it covers lots of topics that I'm very interested in. So women's rights, I found the Trump administration, here we're getting political, but I found it abhorrent and shocking. And she really just articulated a lot of the concerns that I had and made me feel quite validated. And I thought it was really, really funny. So
that's fantastic. Now, is that the titular essay?
Yes. Well, no, Things Are Against Us is the first essay, and that's the titular essay. And it's basically an essay that's just about everything that is against her in her life. So she covers pots that are on the edge of the bench that might fall off, all the way up to more serious issues. But that is basically an essay, much in the style, I think, of her Dux Newburyport book, which maybe you can talk about a little bit, where she repeats things all the way through. And I liked that because it had some punctuation, but it was a little bit poetic in the use of the repetition of the word things. And I found it quite rhythmic. And I actually also purchased the audiobook and listened to that essay as well. And it was not soothing, but very satisfying to listen to.
Narrated by Ellmann herself?
No, it's not. It's narrated by another woman, but she perfectly captures the tone. Sarcastic, funny, sharp.
I asked if the titular essay was the one about Trump because you quote a line from it, which I love. She describes America, and this is the quote from the essay, as, quote, "the worst Boy Scout jamboree in history," or jerk circle.
That is actually, I think, from a different essay, but it's stuck in my mind. I just think she's got a real way she uses a lot of metaphor in her writing and a lot of other kind of language features, a lot of alliteration, a lot of wordplay. And I really liked that line because I think I'm a child of the 90s, and I grew up in a period in which America was really the king of culture, the epitome of what it meant to be a Western country. I think other countries looked up to America as, a freedom fighter fighting for democracy. And a lot of our TV shows come from America. America was just really central in my childhood, even though I come from New Zealand. And I think as I've grown up, we've seen the decline of American culture and the decline of America being looked upon so favorably by the rest of the world. And I think we're rightly coming to critique America's place in the world. And I think that line just encapsulates the problems with putting America on the pedestal that we have had it on for so long. And plus, it's just super funny.
And I keep needing to remind myself that she is, well, I guess she's
Scottish.
only theoretically American. She was born in Illinois, but I believe her parents were both British, weren't they?
I thought that she was living in Scotland.
Well, I think she's lived most of her life in the UK, yes.
Yeah,
Here's Wikipedia, American-born British writer, born in Evanston,
that makes sense.
Illinois. And I think her parents, oh no, her father is a famous biographer, and I assumed because he wrote biographies of British authors that he was British, but no, he's an American. Her mother's a feminist literary critic. So her parents are both American as far as I can see, but she has lived, I think, most of her adult life in.
Well, sounds like she comes from a great literary tradition as well, which is probably where she gets her talent from.
Right. You told me offline you have not read Duck's Newburyport. Did reading this collection make you want to try it?
I'm in two minds. As I said to you offline, there's a big barrier to entry with Duck's Newburyport because it's very big. I'm not scared of a big book, but it's, it is large. It's a big commitment. And I really don't like not to finish books, which is something that I'm trying to overcome. But
keep watching my channel. Keep watching my channel.
I know. I need to take a leaf out of your book, Sean. But if I'm going to purchase a book, if I'm going to commit hours to it, I often feel the need to finish them. And often if I'm not enjoying a book, I will come to enjoy it towards the end. And so there's a sense of, I guess, being a bit generous with my reading time. And if I'm going to start reading something, I want to give it the benefit of the doubt and finish it. But yes, so it's very long. And as we talked about, there's very, very little punctuation. I know it's not one sentence, but it's written in basically one sentence.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily appeal to me. But now that I have read this collection of essays, I do think she's got a lot of smart things to say about really pertinent issues. And so it makes me want to read it for that reason. Although I have read a number of reviews which suggest that she covers really similar ground in these essays, and that what some people say that she shouldn't have written this collection of essays because it's not really delivering necessarily much that is new. So I wonder...
But it's also maybe a more palatable alternative for those of us that couldn't finish Duck's Newburyport. So I'm more likely to try the essays, actually.
Yeah, and I love that about essays, that you don't even have to commit to reading the whole collection.
That's right.
You can pick up the ones that interest you. I mean, in preparation for our interview, I'd obviously read the whole collection, and I read them really quickly because I really enjoyed it. But there were ones that stuck in my mind that I just went back and read because they were my favorites. Yeah. And I think that's what's beautiful about collections of essays, is that you can really cherry pick the ones that you're into.
You end your review by talking about the author bio or author description at the end. I don't know how short it is, whether you'd like to read it or just summarize it the way you did in your review. But I think it would be a fitting way to finish this chapter.
It's about a half page. I won't read the whole thing, but she just sounded like me, just a bit irritated, a little bit fragile, just a woman of the 20th century. And it endeared her to me. So I thought it was a nice note to finish on. And she says, here's the thing, Lucy Ellmann is extremely shy. And then she goes on to say that she hates to fill out forms and cries when she doesn't get her way. So she hates to fill out forms and cries when she doesn't get her way. And I just thought, if that doesn't encapsulate how we deal with our problems in the middle of a pandemic, then I don't know what does, because I think that, it's just very funny. She's just so clever. And I thought it was quite vulnerable as well. Like, she's being a bit self-deprecating, but quite open. She is willing to take stances which are probably quite unpopular, or to deliver stances which might be palatable to the masses in a quite unpopular way.
Right.
And I think that she just doesn't care about that. And that really endeared me to her, because I think there's a lot of policing of language in the modern day. And I think that a lot of that policing of language is right. But I think that what she is trying to say in this collection of essays is really important. And she's not worried about annoying or pissing off people that disagree with her, because she thinks that she has something valuable and important to say. And I liked that.
You used the word endearing. That's the word I would use to describe how I feel about you after this little chat. So I hope you come back, Olivia.
I will. I'm reading a lot. So keep an eye on my reviews. And if there's something you like, I'll definitely come back.
Adiba from London is here again. Adiba, thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me again.
I am really curious about the title of this one. This is a Dutch novel in English translation. Love, if that's what it is. That's maybe my favorite title of the year, by Marijke.
Marijke Schermer.
Please say the full name.
Marijke Schermer. Translated
Marijke
by
Schermer.
Hester Velmans.
Translated from the Dutch by Hester Velmans. Does the book live up to its title? Tell us about it.
When I was reading the blurb, it said that it's kind of like Netflix's Marriage Story. Have you watched Marriage Story on Netflix with Adam Driver? Well, some of your viewers might have watched. It's a big movie on Netflix, and it's
movie. Yeah, I've heard about the movie.
Yeah. So it's very similar to that. And what I mean by that is that it's a quiet story about the disintegration of a couple's marriage, of a long-term marriage. And that's really what it is. And it's simultaneously so very common. Relationship breakdowns are very common, but at the same time, there is such a tragedy to it. Love, if that's what it is it's this kind of almost sigh of a title.
Sigh,
yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh, well, is this it? Is this the best it can get? That's the way I kind of saw the title. It is a very intriguing title. It's a small novella. It's only, I think it's less than 200 pages. And it's narrated from 4 different points of view. There's 2 kind of major players and 2 minor voices, in my opinion. Like, it's not equally split. It begins with David, and David's wife, Terry, has left him for another man. It was a very long marriage. They had 2 children together. And it's looking at the lead up through a series of flashbacks. It's looking to the weeks leading up to her leaving him, and also the months after she left him. So you have David, who's still really grieving the end of his marriage and what he thought was an okay marriage, not a perfect marriage, but an okay marriage. It's Terry who's now found a new man, a new lover, and it's about kind of why she did what she did, why she left David, and what she's looking for now. It's about David's kind of essentially friends with benefits. A divorced woman herself. She's ready for a relationship and she likes David, but she realizes and acknowledges that he's not ready for that.
He's on the rebound.
He's on the rebound, but he's quite, I think, fairly open about that.
Yeah.
And then there's Terry's new lover, whose name I can't remember. Honestly, really, I don't know. He just made my skin crawl a little bit. He's very much like, I don't think there's very many people who would like him. He doesn't believe, for example, in monogamy. That doesn't make someone, by the way, I just want to say that doesn't make someone a bad person. It's just the way he goes about it, which is, I don't believe in monogamy, so I'm not going to respect other people's enjoyment of monogamy either.
So is it a really serious novel? Are there lighter moments? How would you describe the tone of it?
I would say it's always fairly serious. It's one of those slice of life stories, is that you're pushed into these people's lives at a certain moment, at a certain crossroads in their life.
Sure.
And you can kind of see where things are going to go. It is enjoyable for people who like character-driven books.
Which I very much do. So Now, everything that I'm seeing online is that it's not published in English until February of next year. Did you read an arc?
You're right. It was a NetGalley arc.
Okay, that's fine. I may save this interview until like January or something, just so that it comes out closer to the time. Marijke Schermer, I see she's a novelist and playwright, so she's done quite a few plays. Somebody has hailed her as fast becoming one of the most interesting writers in the Netherlands. Was there anything about this novel that you didn't like? You gave it 4 stars, so why not 5?
So I've got this quote from my Goodreads thing, where Marijke, because this is a NetGalley arc, she kind of talks about why she wrote the book, and she says that she wanted to explore whether you can retain individuality in romantic bonds. She also makes a comment about not really judging the characters, that she's just letting you flow with the characters and seeing what happens. While this isn't really a negative, I actually thought maybe it was it's for some people it will definitely be a positive.
Right.
I definitely think that there are elements where it becomes a bit of a, maybe morality tale isn't the right way to say it, but the bad people don't get a very happy ending. Often when you do bad things, karma can be real for a lot of people. You get bad results. I don't believe that there are really any spoilers in this book because it's again so short and it's a character slice of life. But obviously Terry leaving her family, leaving her 2 teenage daughters to essentially chase after a man who doesn't care about her very much for quite selfish, in my reasons. Marijke, I think, she knows that Terry is not a nice, likable character, and it became kind of, this is why you don't cheat. This is why you don't leave your family kind of situation.
I think morality tale is the perfect way. Works for some readers and not for others. It makes me all the more curious to try it to see how I react to that. But
it's not overly dramatic. I will say that it's not like she falls into a vat of like toxic waste or something at the end. It's very realistic, and I think that's often true. People who make poor decisions, they often do pay for those poor decisions. Not everyone in their life is willing to put up with them.
Well, I'm sold. So everybody, it's coming out in February. If it sounds up your alley, you should give it a try too. Adiba, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
This is a very special treat for me in my channel because this is one of my Litsy besties, Cindy from Israel. Cindy, how delightful to be seeing you on Zoom.
Oh, it's so much fun, Sean. I'm so glad to be here.
We go so far back on Litsy. How many years?
I want to say 5+.
5+. Yeah, but we've done a Voxer buddy read a few years ago, but I didn't realize how beautiful you were until about 5 minutes ago.
Thank you, Sean. I've always been smitten with your good looks, though.
Yeah, as I said when we were offline, your check is in the mail. So yes, Cindy and I go way back on Litsy, and her Litsy ID is in the show notes, and you should definitely follow her. You have recently read a memoir that really caught my eye. It is about a woman or some women who started up a feminist bookstore in Cairo, which just is one of the most fascinating premises for a memoir that I could possibly imagine. It's called Shelf Life, Chronicles of a Cairo Bookseller by Nadia Wassef.
That's
just came out
correct.
in early October. Tell us about it.
So I wouldn't say she started a feminist bookstore because it's more like it's a chain called D1, and it's similar to the Barnes & Noble.
Oh, I see.
Or like a Borders kind of concept. It was like a mega store with a cafe and it sprouted out into lots of different branches. But it was very fascinating that she chose that her sister, and a friend, all females, in 2002 opened up a bookstore, a business, in a very, male-dominated society in Egypt. And it is still quite successful. So it's amazing.
It's fascinating. So 2002, and it was the author, Nadia, her sister, and a friend.
They're owners and the booksellers, and they really created a chain for, a name for themselves. And it's pretty remarkable. What's interesting about the book is that it's not just about, owning a bookstore. It's also about being a mom, being a working mom, being a female in, Egypt and like the Middle East and this culture and society. It was really, really, I thought it was a good mix of everything. It was really interesting. 240
pages. And I see that within 10 years, it had 10 locations and 150 employees. So it has done
right,
really well.
Which is pretty amazing. Credit to these women.
So what
really.
I can maybe imagine some of the problems that she had, but tell us about some of the issues that she encountered trying to set up a bookstore run by women in Egypt.
So the sexism is obviously key. I mean, people would complain that they wanted to speak to the manager, see the boss, and when she would show up, they would just look at her like, you got to be kidding me. They wouldn't even give her the time of day. There was bribes to deal with. There was irate customers. One of the stories which I thought was really funny was that she was waiting for a cookbook to clear customs, and she's waiting and waiting and waiting, and this book is not clearing customs, and she cannot imagine what the holdup is, and she's assuming it has to be bribe related, or I don't know, she's not sure what it is. It turns out the book was censored because it was called The Naked Chef, by Jamie Oliver. It had nothing to do with nudity, but it was just the title alone, right? And stuff like that was just, to me, like, it shows you like what you're dealing with.
You clarified, which at the very outset, that it wasn't a feminist bookstore, but I have an inkling that she probably wanted to sell books that might be feminist or maybe GLBT, or certainly books that were challenging for Egyptian culture.
Challenging, yes. She didn't really touch on the LGBTQ community in this memoir, and even within the book, it's broken down by sections, and it's a list of different sections in the bookstore, and that's not one of the sections that she focuses on. So she has business and management, she has the classics, art and design, self-help, but nothing really to do with, homosexuality or any kind of sexuality or feminism or anything like that. She didn't touch on that.
Okay.
So I wonder if that was just maybe pushing it too much for her or for this culture or the society.
Maybe in her second decade.
Maybe, although she did leave the business in 2014, I think, and she moved to London.
Oh, okay. What was the tone? Was there any comic moments, or was it all very serious? Or
no, she definitely had a lot of lighter moments and some heavier moments. She came across a little bit brassy and a little bit tough, and people did not like. I listened to the audio, so people did not like her voice, which is actually, the narrator's voice, but it's her voice and it's her words, because she dropped a lot of F-bombs, which I don't personally mind at all, but people thought it was more for shock value and for like, hey, I'm a tough chick type thing. And I don't know, it turned some readers off.
Oh, okay. Wouldn't turn me off.
I don't know why, but it did.
What was the part of it that you enjoyed the most?
I think for me, I really enjoyed reading about a different culture, about a woman succeeding in the Middle East, in this environment. I mean, owning a bookstore has always been a dream, I think, for me, for anybody. Like, who doesn't want to own a bookstore? That's pretty awesome. I like that she also mentions books within the book. She talks about like the classics that like meant something to her, or like other kinds of self-help books, or books that she felt connected with readers or people like customers. And I thought that was pretty interesting as well. So I enjoyed those aspects. I also liked just learning about her life, what it's like to be a woman in Egypt and in the 2000s, and that was pretty interesting too.
Did it stoke your dream of becoming a bookseller, a bookstore owner?
I think it's going to stay a dream. It seems like it's a lot of work and a lot of stress and a lot of not so much fun. Like, it's fun to probably buy the books and stock the shelves with the books, but then you got to sell them, and you got to really meet people's demands and people's expectations, and I think that's tough.
That suits me just fine, Cindy, because, in terms of our relationship, I don't have to buy the books from you. You give them to me for free. You and I have
it works both ways.
You and I have given each other books over the years.
We have swapped books.
Still have some of them sitting unread on my shelf. This sounds great.
Aww.
Now that we've broken the ice, you'll come back, right?
I will, Sean, because this has really been a treat, and you're just a delightful guy. I'm so happy we got to chat finally.
Well, now I got to send another second check in the mail, but thank you, dear.